My stepmom didn't let me say goodbye to Dad at his funeral. A week later, she and her children stopped me from joining the will reading. She smirked and said, "This meeting is only for heirs named in the will." I said nothing, just quietly handed her lawyer a file. When he opened it, my stepmom turned pale. "My name is Lucian Carter. To the world in Seattle, I am a self-made real estate mogul, a man of cold logic and steel nerves. But if you peel back the layers of expensive suits and high-rise glass offices, you'll find a boy who was once broken by the very people who were supposed to love him. My story isn't just about money, it's about a ghost that haunted a mansion in Franklin, Pennsylvania, and a vengeance that waited 20 years to be served. Franklin in the 1980s was a town of whispers. We lived in the Carter Manor, a sprawling estate that felt more like a kingdom than a home. My mother, Eleanor, was the soul of that house. She was grace personified. I still remember the scent of lavender and vanilla that followed her, and the way her laughter could make even the gloomiest hallway feel bright. She taught me how to fold paper cranes. "Lucian," she would say, her fingers moving with surgical precision, "1,000 cranes can grant a wish, but a single crane can hold a soul's hope. But hope is a fragile thing." When I was 8, the light began to fade. Breast cancer didn't just take her life, it stripped the color from our world. I remember the hospital room, the sterile smell of bleach, and her skeletal hand clutching mine. "Be strong, my little crane," she whispered. Those were the last words. At the funeral, under a relentless gray drizzle, my father, James Carter, held my hand so hard it bruised. He was a titan of industry, the founder of Carter Enterprises, but that day he looked like a man made of glass. Then came the silence. For 2 years, my father buried himself in work to escape the ghost of Eleanor. I became a shadow in my own home, talking to paper cranes because the halls were too quiet. And then he brought her home. Vivian entered our lives like a cold front. She was impeccably dressed, her blonde hair pulled back so tight it seemed to pull her eyes into a permanent, predatory squint. She didn't come alone. She brought her 2 children, Chloe and Elias. From the second they stepped over the threshold, the atmosphere changed. It wasn't a family merger, it was an invasion. "Lucian," my father said, his voice sounding hollow, "this is Vivian. She's your new mother. Try to make her feel welcome." I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I felt a true, primal chill. She didn't smile with her eyes. She smiled with her teeth. "Welcome home, Lucian," she said, her voice dripping with artificial honey. "I think we're going to have a very interesting time together." She was right. Within months, the lavender scent of my mother was replaced by Vivian's pungent, expensive perfume. She rearranged the furniture, threw out my mother's favorite paintings, and began the slow, methodical process of erasing Eleanor Carter from existence. Chloe was 2 years older than me, a miniature version of her mother, possessing a talent for psychological warfare. Elias was a year younger, a brute who realized early on that my father's distraction was a license to torment. "Orphan," Chloe would hiss in the hallways when my father was at the office. "Why are you still here?" Elias would ask, pushing me into the dirt while I was trying to fold my cranes. "This is our house now. Our mom is the queen, and you're just the trash she hasn't taken out yet." I tried to tell my father. I really did. One evening, I waited for him in his study. "Dad, Vivian says I don't belong here." Elias broke the crane Mom made me. My father didn't even look up from his ledger. His eyes were bloodshot, his spirit withered. "Lucian, don't be difficult. Vivian is doing her best. You need to adjust. Stop living in the past." That was the moment I realized I was truly alone. My father wasn't just grieving, he was being sedated by Vivian's calculated care. She was the one who managed his schedule, she was the one who filtered his calls, and she was the one who whispered in his ear every night that I was a troubled child, who couldn't let go of a dead woman. By the time I was 12, the physical abuse started. It wasn't bruises that would show, Vivian was too smart for that. It was slaps across the face in the kitchen when no one was looking, or being locked in the dark basement for discipline because I had talked back. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I had found the very last paper crane my mother and I had folded together. It was hidden in an old shoebox under my bed. Elias burst in, snatched it, and ripped it into confetti right in front of my eyes. "Give it back!" I screamed, lunging at him. I was smaller, but I was fueled by 4 years of suppressed rage. I tackled him to the floor. The door flew open. Vivian didn't ask questions. She grabbed me by the hair and threw me against the wardrobe. My shoulder hit the wood. "How dare you touch my son?" she shrieked, her face contorting into something demonic. She slapped me so hard my vision blurred. "You are an ungrateful, violent little brat. Just like your mother, weak and useless." When my father came home, he didn't see the tears or the bruised shoulder. He saw Vivian crying about how I had attacked poor Elias for no reason. "I'm disappointed in you, Lucian," my father said, his voice cold. I didn't cry then. I felt something else. A cold, hard knot forming in my chest. I retreated to my room, locked the door, and reached under the bed to a loose floorboard. I pulled out my mother's diary. "Lucian, you are my most precious gift. Never let anyone make you doubt your worth. You are a Carter. You are built of stronger stuff than they know." I looked at the shredded pieces of the last crane on the floor. I didn't try to tape them back together. Instead, I picked up a fresh piece of paper. I folded a new one. Then another. And another. "I will leave this place," I whispered to the empty room. "I will build something they can never touch. And one day, I will come back for everything you stole." The golden cage was locked, but the bird had found its wings. I just had to wait for the right wind to blow. The wind I was waiting for finally blew when I turned 18. While other kids were celebrating their graduation with parties and luxury cars gifted by their parents, I was standing in the shadows of the Carter Manor with a single worn-out backpack. My father had offered me a position at Carter Enterprises, a low-level desk job where Vivian could keep an eye on me. "It's time you learned the family business, Lucian," he had said, his voice sounding like it was coming from a man underwater. "I already learned the family business, Dad," I replied, looking him straight in the eyes. "I learned that in this house, loyalty is bought, and love is a liability. I'm leaving." Vivian didn't even try to hide her smirk as I walked out the door. She thought she had won. She thought that by driving me away with nothing but a few $100s and a diary, she had secured the kingdom for her own cubs, Chloe and Elias. She didn't realize that she hadn't exiled a victim. She had unleashed a predator. I boarded a bus to Pittsburgh. The journey was long, and the seat was cramped, but for the first time in a decade I could breathe. The air didn't smell like Vivian's suffocating perfume. It smelled like exhaust, rain, and freedom. University was a trial by fire. I had a partial scholarship to Carnegie Mellon, but the rest I had to earn. While my classmates were out drinking, I was scrubbing floors in the university cafeteria and pulling double shifts at a local diner. My hands were often burned by steam and scarred by industrial cleaners, but every time I felt like quitting, I would open my mother's diary. "The world is harsh, Lucian, but it is also full of wonders for those brave enough to build them." I majored in business and urban development. I didn't want to just sell buildings. I wanted to create sanctuaries. I wanted to build the kind of homes where children wouldn't have to hide in closets to feel safe. During my sophomore year, I met Sarah. She was a journalism major with a smile that reminded me of the sun hitting the Pennsylvania hills. She was the first person I ever told about the paper cranes. "You carry a lot of weight for someone so young, Lucian," she said one night as we studied in the dim light of the library. "It's not weight, Sarah," I replied, my voice raspy. "It's fuel." After graduation, I didn't stay in Pittsburgh. I needed to put more distance between myself and the shadow of the Carters. I moved to Seattle, the city of rain and reinvention. The first 3 years were brutal. I lived in a studio apartment in Rainier Valley where the heater broke every winter and the walls were paper thin. I worked for a small firm called Green Horizon. The owner, Harold Christie, was a man who believed in soulful architecture. He saw something in me, a hunger that went beyond professional ambition. "You work like a man trying to outrun a ghost," Harold told me after I stayed up 72 hours straight to finish a proposal for an affordable housing complex. "I'm not outrunning anything, Harold," I said, rubbing my bloodshot eyes. I'm building a fortress. And build I did. By my late 20s, I had moved from an assistant to a partner. I pioneered a model for sustainable community living, luxury standard housing at accessible prices. My name started appearing in trade journals. Lucian Carter, the architect of empathy. I sent my father a clipping of my first major cover story. I didn't expect a call. I didn't even expect him to read it. 2 weeks later, a check for $50,000 arrived in the mail with a typed note. Congratulations. Use this to buy a better suit. JC. I didn't cash it. I framed the check and hung it in my office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that my father still thought everything had a price tag. Back in Franklin, the reports I received from private investigators I hired told a different story. Carter Enterprises was hemorrhaging its soul. Under Vivian's consultation, the company had shifted away from community projects and into high-stakes, high-risk luxury gambling, resorts, casinos, and elite condos that required tearing down historical neighborhoods. Elias was now the vice president of development. He was known as a bulldozer, both in business and in his personal life. He was arrogant, reckless, and deeply in debt to people far more dangerous than him. Chloe was the face of the company's PR, spinning lies about revitalization while the poor were pushed out of their homes. And my father? He was fading. The investigators said he rarely left his room. Vivian had replaced the old family staff with people on her own payroll. She was the gatekeeper. She was the queen of a crumbling castle. Then the call came. I was 37 years old, standing in my glass-walled office overlooking the Puget Sound. The sun was setting, turning the water into molten gold. The phone rang. It wasn't my father. It wasn't even Vivian. Mr. Carter? The voice was soft, trembling. My name is Elena. I am a nurse. I've been caring for your father, James. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Is he? He passed away 2 hours ago, she whispered. The funeral is in 3 days. But Mr. Carter, you need to come. There are things being said. Things being done. He left something for you. Not at the house. Not with the lawyers. With me. I hung up the phone. I didn't cry. The knot of ice that had formed when I was 12 years old finally shattered, but it didn't leave me cold. It left me electric. I walked to my desk and picked up a piece of square blue paper. My fingers, now calloused and strong, moved with a memory of their own. I folded the beak, the wings, the tail. I placed the paper crane on my desk. I'm coming home, Vivian, I whispered to the empty office. And I'm bringing the storm with me. The rain in Franklin didn't feel like the rain in Seattle. In Seattle, it was a cleansing mist. Here, it felt like a heavy, suffocating shroud. As I stepped out of the black car in front of the Franklin funeral home, the smell of wet earth and lilies triggered a tidal wave of suppressed memories. I walked into the parlor, my boots clicking rhythmically on the hardwood floors. The room was filled with the elite of Franklin. The same people who had watched my mother wither away and then watched my father be consumed by a black widow. They whispered as I passed, their eyes darting between my expensive coat and my cold, unreadable face. Then I saw them. Vivian was standing by the casket, a vision in black lace and pearls. She didn't look like a grieving widow. She looked like an actress who had finally landed the role of a lifetime. Chloe stood beside her, checking her reflection in a compact mirror, while Elias leaned against a pillar, looking bored, his eyes bloodshot from what I suspected was a long night of expensive scotch. As I approached the casket, Vivian's head snapped toward me. The mask of sorrow slipped for a fraction of a second, replaced by pure, unadulterated venom. Lucian, she said, her voice loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. How brave of you to show up. After all these years of neglecting your father, I'm surprised you found the way back to Franklin. I didn't answer her. I stood over my father's body. James Carter looked small. The man who had once loomed like a giant over my life was now just a pale, waxen figure. I felt a pang of something I didn't expect, pity. He had lived his final years as a prisoner in a house he built, surrounded by people who were only waiting for his heart to stop. I'm here to say goodbye, Vivian, I said quietly. That's more than you've ever done for him while he was alive. Elias stepped forward, his chest puffed out. Watch your mouth, Lucian. You're a guest here. A temporary one. We've already seen the will. You're not in it. Not a cent. Not a brick. So pay your respects and get out of our sight. A small, grim smile touched my lips. The will? Is that what this is about for you? A payday? It's about legacy, Vivian hissed, stepping closer, her perfume cloying and sweet. A legacy you abandoned. Now move. You're blocking the view for people who actually mattered to him. I stepped back, allowing the charade to continue. I sat in the back row during the service, listening to the priest drone on about a man he clearly didn't know. When it was time for the eulogy, Elias got up and gave a speech so hollow it felt like an insult. He spoke of business expansion and new horizons, turning a funeral into a corporate pitch. After the burial, as the crowd thinned, a woman in a simple green coat approached me. She looked nervous, her eyes constantly scanning the area for Vivian's henchmen. Mr. Carter? She whispered. I'm Elena, the nurse. Thank you for calling me, I said. She fumbled in her bag and pulled out a thick, heavy envelope. He told me to give this to you the moment he was gone. He said he knew they wouldn't let him speak to you. He kept this under his mattress for months. Please take it. And be careful. They've already started moving the money. I took the envelope, the weight of it heavy in my hand. I didn't open it there. I went to a small, nondescript motel on the edge of town, a place where Vivian's influence didn't reach. I sat on the edge of the bed and tore the seal. Inside was a letter, written in a shaky, desperate hand. My Lucian, my son. By the time you read this, my silence will be eternal. And for that, I am more sorry than words can express. I was a weak man. After your mother died, I let the darkness in, and it took the form of Vivian. I let her poison my mind. I let her convince me that you hated me, that you were ashamed of my weakness. She intercepted your letters. She deleted your messages. She built a wall of lies between us until I was too tired to climb over it. But I woke up, Lucian. Too late for us, perhaps, but not too late for justice. For the last year, I have watched them. I have watched Vivian and Elias drain Carter Enterprises to fund their greed. They think they have a will that leaves them everything. They don't know that the will they saw was a decoy. The real one is enclosed. Everything, the house, the company, the family assets, it all goes to you. You are the only one who can save the Carter name. There is also a digital drive in this envelope. Listen to the recordings. Watch the files. They aren't just greedy, Lucian. They are criminals. Forgive me if you can. With love, Dad. I pulled out a small USB drive and a notarized document stamped with a seal Vivian had never seen. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. From a cold, righteous fury. I plugged the drive into my laptop. The first file was an audio recording. How much longer, Vivian? It was Elias's voice. The old man is dragging this out. Holt is getting impatient. He wants the riverfront property by the end of the month. Patience, Elias. Vivian's voice came through, sharp and chilling. The doctor increased his sedative. He won't last the week. Once the funeral is over, we sign the papers with Raymond Holt. We get our payout, and Carter Enterprises becomes a shell. Lucian will get nothing but the dirt on his father's grave. I closed the laptop. The room was silent, save for the sound of my own breathing. They hadn't just stolen my childhood. They had murdered my father's spirit and were now preparing to butcher his life's work. They thought they were the predators. They thought I was just the boy they had kicked into the street 20 years ago. I picked up a piece of motel stationery. I didn't write a letter. I folded a crane. A black one. The game is over, Vivian, I said to the shadows. And the house is about to come crashing down. The following morning, the headquarters of Carter Enterprises looked like a fortress of glass and steel, gleaming under a deceptive sun. Inside the executive boardroom, the atmosphere was one of predatory triumph. Vivian sat at the head of the table, flanked by Chloe and Elias. Across from them sat Raymond Holt, a man known for stripping companies of their assets like a vulture picking at a carcass. The signatures are all we need, Vivian, Holt said, sliding a thick stack of contracts across the polished mahogany. Once these are signed, the riverfront is mine, and your offshore accounts will be very, very healthy. Vivian picked up a fountain pen, a cold smile playing on her lips. To a new beginning, she purred. I wouldn't uncork the champagne just yet. The double doors swung open with a thundering crash. I walked in, followed by Franklin Ross, the one lawyer in this town Vivian couldn't buy, and 2 officers from the sheriff's department. Vivian's pen stopped a millimeter from the paper. Her face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of ash. Lucian? What is the meaning of this intrusion? This is a private board meeting. It was a board meeting, I said, walking to the foot of the table, leaning forward until my reflection was visible in the mahogany. Now, it's a crime scene. Elias stood up, his face reddening. You've got no standing here, loser. We have the will. Mom is the executor. Security. Get this man out of here. The officers didn't move. Instead, Mr. Ross stepped forward, opening his briefcase and laying a gold-sealed document on the table. Actually, Elias, the will you've been using to lien on this company is a forgery. This is the last will and testament of James Carter, signed, witnessed, and notarized 3 weeks ago in the presence of his medical staff. Vivian lunged for the paper, but I pinned it down with my hand. Read the fine print, Vivian, I whispered. Everything. The house. The cars. Every single share of Carter Enterprises. It all comes to me. But that's not the best part. I turned to Raymond Holt. Mr. Holt, I'd suggest you leave. Unless you want to be named as a co-conspirator in a racketeering and elder abuse case. Holt didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his briefcase and vanished, leaving Vivian and her children alone in the path of the storm. I pulled out my laptop and pressed play. The room was filled with the sound of Vivian and Elias's voices, the recording from the motel. The doctor increased his sedative. He won't last the week. The silence that followed was deafening. Chloe began to sob, a high, pathetic sound. Elias collapsed back into his chair, the bravado vanishing like smoke. Vivian, however, remained frozen, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and pure, concentrated hatred. You think you've won, she hissed, her voice cracking. I spent 20 years building this. I gave that old man the best years of my life. You spent 20 years slow poisoning a family, I countered, my voice as steady as a heartbeat. You took a man who was grieving and turned him into a ghost. You took a child and tried to break his spirit. But you forgot one thing, Vivian. You can't kill a legacy that was built on truth. I stood up straight, adjusted my coat, and looked at the officers. They have 1 hour to vacate the Carter Manor. Anything they didn't bring into that house 20 years ago stays. If they ever set foot in Franklin again, we file the criminal charges for the sedatives. You're letting us go? Elias stammered, hope flickering in his eyes. I'm not letting you go, I said, looking him in the eye. I'm letting you live with the knowledge that you are nothing. You have no name, no money, and no home. That is a far longer prison sentence than any judge could give you. An hour later, I stood on the driveway of the Carter Manor. I watched as a single taxi pulled away, carrying 3 people and a few suitcases. Vivian looked out the back window, her face a mask of defeat, watching as the house, my house, faded into the distance. I walked inside. The mansion was quiet, but it no longer felt cold. I went to my father's study. I sat in his chair and looked at the portrait of my mother hanging on the wall, the one I had brought back from storage. I took a piece of white paper from the desk. My fingers moved with practiced grace, folding, creasing, tucking. 1,000 cranes for a wish, but this one was for a goodbye. I walked out to the garden, to the spot where my mother used to sit. I placed the white crane on the stone bench. It's done, Mom, I whispered. The weight I had carried since I was 8 years old didn't just lift, it evaporated. I wasn't the orphan anymore. I wasn't the weird kid or the failed heir. I was Lucian Carter. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't building a fortress to keep people out. I was opening the doors to let the light back in. The drizzle stopped. The sun broke through the Pennsylvania clouds, reflecting off the glass of the greenhouse. I turned and walked back toward the house, my head held high, ready to build a future that would make both of my parents proud. The paper crane didn't fly away, but as the wind picked up, its wings fluttered, as if it were finally, truly at peace.